Now start, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so right now we are actually starting with our fourth module, hardware synthesis. Third module, up to third module we have completed in the class itself. So hardware synthesis, there is module 4. I have already shared the PPT. You might have gone through that, right? So you know the topic, right? So then what is hardware synthesis? Just answer. Anyone? Hardware synthesis? What do you mean by hardware synthesis? Anyway, so forget about hardware synthesis. Answer about what is software synthesis that you have actually studied. What is software synthesis? What do you mean by software synthesis? Or what is happening in software synthesis? So we are actually doing many process in software synthesis, and what finally what we will get. So what's the input and what's the output for a software synthesis? Anybody? അറിയാമെന്നാണോ അറിയത്തില്ലെന്നാണോ?
Output will be a set of code. I mean, in terms of binary code.
Okay.
Output
Binary
will be
executable.
binary code in case of software synthesis.
Okay, that's
Yes.
right. So that's from the specification we are actually generating the corresponding binaries or executable. That was software synthesis. Similarly, we have to do hardware synthesis. That means hardware synthesis means in our embedded system we will be having custom hardware or hardware IPs as well as custom processors will be there, right?
Yes.
So you have to actually create that particular hardware. So from the specification to corresponding RTL specification, that's what we call it as hardware synthesis. Hardware synthesis means actually generation of RTL specification from the system specification, or from the specification to the RTL specification. That is what we call it as hardware synthesis. Okay, from that means we'll be having a code which may be written in some high-level languages or some modeling languages. Okay, so from that we can actually how to generate the corresponding hardware, right? So what we have to do is we have to first convert that to the RTL design. So then using some RTL tools, we can actually go for the corresponding hardware manufacture. Okay, that is what we call as hardware synthesis. So in our lab, you will be familiar with the generation of hardware. That means in the case of FPGA design as well as ASIC design, you may be doing in your lab, right? In your lab, you will be having these experiments. You have to generate the corresponding hardware for a counter, whatever be the gates we will be doing in the lab. Inverter, you will be doing the ASIC design. Similarly, in the FPGA, you will be doing some counters and all, right? So in all these cases, we are actually generating the corresponding. So if you have the RTL design, we can use this particular RTL tools for the generation of corresponding hardware. That means if you have the RTL design, you can actually use it for FPGA design as well as ASIC design, right? And I know. So like that. If you have the RTL design, it's possible for corresponding FPGA design or ASIC design is possible. So first step is to generate the RTL specification from a high-level language or a modeling language. So that is what we call as hardware synthesis. Or in the hardware synthesis flow, we will be actually this first slide shows the what is hardware synthesis. That means here we are actually worried about custom design. That means custom hardware blocks, maybe custom IPs or custom processors. Okay. So in hardware synthesis, we are actually dealing with the custom design of custom hardware, custom processors, or custom IP. All this will be considered as hardware blocks, right? So hardware synthesis is the generation of corresponding RTL specification for these processors from the specification, which may be written in some modeling languages or high level languages. Okay, that is what we call it as hardware synthesis. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So that's a topic, hardware synthesis, generation of RTL specification from the specification or from the system specification or the application specification. Okay, so here these are the outline of the presentation. Okay, right now we will be actually dealing with the first topic only, design flow majorly, or if possible we will be moving up to RTL architecture. Okay, first one is the design flow. So hardware synthesis design flow. This is actually the block diagram which represents the hardware synthesis design flow. So starting, we will be having the specification. At the bottom, you can actually see the RTL model. Here, this one is the RTL model. Okay, here this one is the RTL model. So from specification to RTL model, that's actually we call it as hardware synthesis design flow. From here to here. So then we will be having some RTL tools which can be used, which will be normally our design tools will be there. All design tools will be actually supporting this RTL models, and from that we can actually generate the corresponding hardware. Okay. So that's basically hardware design flow. First step, first means we will be input is the specification, which will be a high level language, that is C language, maybe written in some C language, or maybe some other modeling languages. System C or C will be basically the input, that is the specification. Okay, what is the functionality for that particular hardware, which will be written in some code.
Level language.
Okay, that is what we call it as specification. Input is specification, which is a C code which describes the functionality of that particular block. If you're actually worried about a hardware block, so what's the actual role of that particular block, which will be written in some C code or some modeling language. That means system C can also be the specification. So first step is the specification here. So specification is actually the code corresponding for that particular block. It may be a C code or a system C code. Okay, that's the specification. So first step is the compilation. So here from the specification from the high level languages, we will be actually moving or compiling that high level languages to generate an intermediate code. That is what we call it as tool model. Tool model means we are converting this high level language, or we are actually doing the compilation of this C code to an intermediate model which is actually understandable by our design tool. Okay, so first step is compilation. From the specification we are actually generating the tool model. Tool model is nothing but it's a actual intermediate model which can be understandable by our corresponding tool. Whatever be the design tool that we are using, it can actually understand that particular tool, this tool model. Okay, system specification. From system specification, that means it's a high level languages or C language we will be having. So we are actually converting that C code to an intermediate model, that is called as tool model. So we can use this tool model for doing some estimation. That means we will be having different parameters to be computed, right? We may be worried about the performance, power, etc. of that particular design. So we can actually do the estimation of these parameters. For that, what we are actually using is the tool model. Okay. So first, from the specification, you are actually compiling it, or from the after compilation, we are actually getting the tool model. So this tool model can be used by our tools for doing certain estimation. That means estimation of different parameters can be done using this tool model. Okay. So we have certain parameters. We will be actually worried about the power, performance, cost, etc. of that particular design. So first of all, we have to estimate the current power consumption on all. For that, we'll be using the tool model. So once you have the estimates, or once you have an estimation of the different matrices, you can actually go for the high level synthesis. This HLS means it's a high level synthesis. Okay, so here we can actually do, this is the actual hardware synthesis. So from the matrices that we are obtained, so we can actually use the tool model, and we are actually using this tool model to create the RTL model. That is what we are actually doing in HLS. Okay, HLS is actually the generation of RTL model. Output is actually the RTL model. Here we can actually see this one is the RTL model. So from the tool model, it is actually generating the RTL model. Okay, that is actually we call doing actually HLS. HLS is actually performance, or actually it is the generation of the RTL model from the tool model. So we have different parameters that is actually estimated using this tool model. That is using estimation, we can actually have an estimation of different design matrices, and using these estimates we can actually go for the HLS. So here in the HLS, what we are actually having is 3 steps, that is allocation, binding, and scheduling. These are the 3 steps in HLS. Okay, HLS actually consists of 3 sections: allocation, binding, and scheduling. Okay, so for that we can actually, allocation is nothing but selection of different RTL components from the component library. That means from this tool model we can actually know what is the different blocks, what is the functionalities of this particular code. Okay, so for that, what are the different RTL components that we need? Okay, so that components will be selected from the RTL library. That is what we call it as allocation and their interconnection. So in order to achieve this particular functionality, what are the different RTL components required? That will be selected from the component library and their interconnection according to the tool model. So according to the tool model means according to the functionality required, these components will be interconnected. That is what we call it as allocation. Okay. So then comes the binding. Binding means here in our code, in our C code and all, we will be having different variables, right? So in the hardware, we have to allocate corresponding registers for each and every variable. Okay. So in the hardware, if you want to, we cannot actually directly use the variable. In the case of a software code, we can actually directly declare some variable and it will work. But in the case of hardware, we require a corresponding memory or registers for each and every variable. Okay. So binding performs the allocation. That means we will be actually having different variables, and these particular variables will be allocated to corresponding register files. That means each and every variable will be having a corresponding location. So that allocation will be done in the case of binding. Okay, binding of the variables to its corresponding registers will be called as binding. Then comes the scheduling. Scheduling means here what is the actual what actually needs to happen in each and every clock cycle. All this will be defined in this scheduling. Okay, basically we are actually generating a RTL model. That means we will be having different RTL components, and that will be connected according to our design. And for that particular RTL code, we will be, or RTL components means we will have different functional units as well as registers and all. So these registers, what are the variables in the design? So that variables needs to be assigned to the corresponding register locations, that is binding, and in each and every clock cycle, what needs to happen, that will be done in the scheduling section. Okay, basically we are actually generating the RTL model. RTL model means different RTL components will be there. RTL components will be connected according to our input design. Okay, input means here the tool model. As per the tool model, we are actually connecting this RTL components. That is what we call as allocation. Then we have different registers, and in our input model we have different variables. So this variable needs to be allocated, or the variables should have a corresponding memory locations. The corresponding allocation is actually called as binding. And then comes the scheduling. Scheduling means in each and every clock cycle what needs to happen, that will be specified in the scheduling. So once you have all these things, we will be actually have the corresponding RTL model. That is what we call as model generation. Then we will get the RTL model. This is the overall design flow of an hardware synthesis. Is it clear? Any doubts?
No, sir.
Okay. So anyway, hardware design flow will actually have input will be specification that will be in some high level languages, so modeling languages. That means we can have C or system C as the input. Okay. So the functionality of our corresponding design will be, our corresponding code for this particular block will be defined in the corresponding C language. So from that we will be actually do the compilation. That's the first stage. So output will be the tool model. That is an intermediate model that will be understandable by our design tools. Okay. So using these design tools, we can actually do some estimations. So we will be actually estimating the different parameters. That is design parameters for our particular block will be defined. So we'll be actually do the estimation. Okay. Then we have to do the HLS. HLS means it will be actually have 3 steps: allocation, binding, and scheduling. Okay. So then comes the model generation, and then we will be actually have the corresponding RTL model. So these RTL models can be used as the input to different RTL tools, which will be used for generation of the final hardware. Okay. So RTL, up to RTL model generation will be the design flow from the specification to corresponding RTL model. That much will be actually considered as the hardware design flow. From that RTL model, we can actually generate the corresponding hardware using RTL tools. Different RTL tools will be available, okay, in the market. So using any of the RTL tools, we can actually generate the required hardware from the RTL model. So hardware design flow means from the specification to the corresponding model generation. Okay. So these are the things that we discussed. That means first step is the compilation, and then we will get a tool model. Okay. So this tool model will be used for the estimation of different parameters, that is power, performance, cost, dependency matrices, etc. Okay. Then comes the HLS. HLS will be having allocate, bind, and scheduling, 3 processes. So we will be selecting different RTL components from the component library and connect them. That is what we call as allocate. Then bind. So binding means it's corresponding binding of the variables to the storage elements. Okay. And there will be different, obviously there will be different functional units. That means what are the operations that needs to be done by the corresponding functional unit. That means ALU will be there, can perform additions, arithmetic and logical operations. So what are the operations that needs to be done by these functional units? All this will be defined in the case of binding. Okay. Then comes the scheduling. That means what happens in each and every clock cycle will be defined in the schedule. This is what we call as HLS. So HLS, we can have different algorithms for this high-level synthesis. So we can actually, 2 approaches will be there. One is we can actually perform allocation, binding, and schedule at a time, or one process at a time. First we will do the allocation, then scheduling, and then allocation, binding, and then scheduling. So that is the second approach, one process at a time. That may not be giving an optimal design. So for obtaining an optimal design, we have to actually consider this allocation, binding, and scheduling simultaneously. Okay, that is actually a complex algorithm. We will actually go through this high-level synthesis in detail. In this module, what we have to concentrate is on high-level synthesis. We will actually cover the different algorithms or how we can actually do the high-level synthesis. So in order to obtain a optimal design, we have to perform this allocation, binding, and scheduling simultaneously. Okay. So there's 2 approaches for high-level synthesis, and means either 3 at a time or 1 process at a time. These are the 2 approaches. Okay. Then RTL component library will be off. From the RTL component library, we are actually selecting the corresponding for the allocation. We need the corresponding RTL models, right? So from the component library, we are actually selecting the components. It will be having library will be having RTL components, storage element components, functional units, buses, interface, etc. will be available in the component library. So from there, we actually use the, or we will be actually selecting the different RTL components needed for our design. Okay. So then we can actually use any of the RTL. This RTL model can be given as the input to any of the commercial tools for further processing or further hardware generation. We can actually use the RTL model. So in the design flow, we are actually concentrating from the specification to RTL model generation. Okay, is it clear? So from specification to RTL model. What are the RTL components needed? How they are to be connected? That will be considered as allocation. Then variables and functional units to corresponding operations and storage elements will be considered as binding. Then scheduling, what happens in each and every clock cycle, and that will be giving an RTL model. Okay, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So,
Okay, that is hardware design flow. So then next is actually RTL architecture. So in an RTL architecture, we will be having two separate blocks. That means one is the controller, as next section is the data path. Okay, as in our processor, we will be having a controller as well as a data path, right? In every processor will be actually having a controller section as well as a data path. Similarly, in the RTL architecture also, so if you are actually defining the RTL model of a particular design, we have to define the controller section as well as the data path separate. Okay, so here, so controller basically it will be actually generating the control signals required for the data path as well as the control outputs. Okay, here the controller, this is the controller. So here we will be having control inputs, that is external control inputs may be there. So depending upon the external control inputs as well as the status signals that is coming from the data path, the controller will generate the control signals for the data path, and if there is any other control outputs, that also will be generated by the controller. Okay. So finite state machine based or FSM controller, that means it will be having different state. So for each and every control inputs, what is the corresponding next state, that will be find out, and that is what we call as FSM controller. Normally we will be having different states, and depending upon the control inputs, the corresponding states will be selected. So that is FSM controller. And for simple designs, we can actually use a FSM based controller or finite state machine based controller. Okay, it will be enough. So we will be defining the different states required for this particular design, and depending upon the control signal, what happens in what is the next state, that will be find out, and that switching to that corresponding states will be taking place. That is what FSM based controller will do. Then for complex designs, we can actually have another type of controller, that is programmable controller. That means in the case of a programmable controller, we will be having a program. Okay, or program memory will be there. We'll be storing the corresponding controller program in the program memory, and depending upon the current situation or depending upon the input, it will actually generate the corresponding address of the next instruction to be executed will be find out based on the input, and that instruction will be executed. That is programmable controller. So in the controller section, we can have FSM based controller as well as a programmable controller. For simple design, we can actually move to FSM based controller, and for complex designs, we can actually have programmable controller. In the case of programmable controller, we'll be having corresponding. We will actually go through the details of these FSM controller and programmable controller in later slides. Okay, so basically, controller will be having two types. That means either FSM based controller or programmable controller can be used. So in the case of data path data paths will be basically consisting of different functional units and different registers. Okay, so some data inputs will be there for the data path. So depending upon the corresponding input and the control signal. So control signals will be actually determining what is the operations to be executed by the data path. So depending upon the control signals, it will actually, the functional units in the corresponding data path will actually perform the corresponding operation, and the outputs will be generated, and that will be given as the data output of the data path. Same thing, or in some cases there will be some status signal that is generated by the data path that needs to be given back to the controller. Okay, status signal means, so after performing an operation, what is the, maybe after performing an addition, what is the status of the carry, that may not, that has to be informed to the controller. So that can be considered as a status signal. So there will be a status register. So it will be updating the contents of that particular operation. After doing that particular operation, what is the status of the different signals, that will be updated in the status register. Or controller can actually access that particular status register, and that will be acting as the input for the control. Okay. So basically, RTL architecture will be having two sections. One is a controller section and one is a data path section. So data path basically consists of different functional units as well as input and output registers. So depending upon the corresponding inputs from the controller, that is the control signals, depending upon the control signals, what is the operation to be executed by the data path will be selected, and their corresponding operation will be executed by the data path, and that outputs will be given as the data output. In some cases, there may be some status signals that needs to be given to the controller. So controller will be actually doing or generating the control signal for the data path as well as some control outputs to the external environment. Okay, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Doubts? Same thing, that means what we have seen in basic processor architecture, same thing we are actually discussing here. Here we will be having a controller as well as data path section. Controller will be taking care of the difference, what is the current state and what will be the next state, and all this will be taken care of by the controller. And it will be instructing the data path. So depending upon the control signals and the corresponding input, the data path will be generating the corresponding outputs. So there are different methods for improving the performance. One is pipelining. So pipelining can be done for the controller or control section as well as the data path section. Okay. So different stages will be there. If it's a two-stage pipeline, two particular operations can be done simultaneously. That means one stage will be handling one operation and second stage will be handling another operation. So functional unit pipelining, data path pipelining, and controller or control path pipelining is actually available. So pipelining can be done for both data path as well as controller. So in the data path, we can have different registers. So that is what, so here, even if the name is data path, here the data path means the register pipelining, and then control functional unit pipelining means different functional units will be there. That means ALU will be there. So ALU or multiplier, whatever be the functional units available over there, that can actually have the pipelining facility. Okay, so pipelining can be for data path as well as the controller in general. So in the data path, we can have the register pipelining, or register files will be having that pipelining facility, or the functional unit may be having the pipelining facility. Okay, so that's basically for improving the performance. We can have different approaches. One is pipelining. So pipelining can be done for the controller as well as the data path. Then structure for the data path, for improving the performance of the data path, we will be having different mechanism. One is chaining. Chaining means different means functional units may be connected as a chain. That means output of the one connected to another clock. And then multi-cycling. Multi-cycling means maybe for a particular block, it may require more than one clock cycle for generating an output. And then data forwarding mechanism may be there. Then branch prediction, for improving the performance of the pipeline, we can have the branch prediction mechanism. And caches. Cache may be used for memory for improving the performance or not to improve the access time, we can actually use the cache. These are actually the different techniques that we have already studied. All these techniques can be used in the data paths for improving the performance. Okay. Okay, but in general, RTL architecture will be having a controller section as well as a data path section. Controller will receive the control inputs and it will generate the control outputs. Okay, as well as the control inputs to the data paths. Then data path from the corresponding, or what is the instruction from the controller, that is the control signal. Depending upon the control signal, it will process the data and it will generate the corresponding data outputs as well as status signals which will be given back to the controller. That's the basic architecture. Okay. So this is the basic block diagram. Now we are actually going to an FSM based controller. So here we have said that the controller can be an FSM controller or a programmable controller. So this is the basic block diagram. Okay. And now we are actually going to the FSM based controller. Okay. This is an FSM based controller. So here, as said earlier, this is the data path section. From here to here, it's a data path. This one is the data path section. So here we'll be having inputs. External inputs will be there. These are the external inputs that is given to the data path. Data inputs will be coming. So that may be connected to through some input ports. So through input ports, it will be given to the corresponding buses. These are the different buses. Okay, here we have 3 buses. In this particular data path, we have B1, B2, and B3. These are the 3 buses in this particular data path. Okay, so the input ports are actually connected to the bus 3. Data inputs will be connected to bus 3. Okay, here we will be having different registers. These colors are actually registers. Okay, these are all registers, and this is a register file. Here we can actually have a set of registers connected together, and this is a 2-port register file. That means we can actually have 2 ports, 2 output ports for this register file. We can actually access two particular register locations from this register file simultaneously. That is what we call it as 2-port register file. Okay. Anyway, in this particular diagram, this is a 2-port register file. We can actually access 2 ports simultaneously. So this is the data path. So we have actually explained that data path consists of different registers as well as the functional units, right? Here in this diagram, we are actually considering a register file for storing the different registers. So register file means it will be having n number of locations available, n memory locations will be available in that register file, and that can be accessed through the buses of this particular data path. So here, this is a 2-port register file, means it can actually access 2 memory locations simultaneously from this particular register file. If you are giving the memory locations, you can actually access that particular location. If you are giving the address of the location, you can actually access that particular memory location. So simultaneously, 2 such locations can be accessed in this particular register file. This is the 2-port register file, and here we have some functional units. This one is a ALU and multiplier. So basically in this particular design we have 2 functional units. One is an ALU and next one is a multiplier. Okay, so this particular multiplier, here we can actually see a black line, right? This one is actually to represents the pipeline. That means here this particular multiplier is actually pipeline. We are actually, okay, this is a multiplier, and here there is a black line. So this particular black line represents the pipeline. That means if we are actually having a representation like this. This is to show that this is a pipeline multiplier.
Pipeline
So
multiplier.
it may be 2-stage or 3-stage, whatever be. So here we are actually considering a multiplier which is actually having 2-stage pipeline. Okay, that means if you are actually giving the input to this particular multiplier, it will require 2 clock cycles. That means 2 stages are there. So after 2 clock cycles only, you will be getting the corresponding output, or it can actually process operation simultaneously by this particular multiplier. Okay, when the first process is in the second stage, it can actually take up another process in the first stage. Okay, this is a multiplier, and it's a pipeline multiplier, and all these functional units will be connected together. So here we have some registers. This is the output registers, okay, for this particular ALU, and these are the input registers to the ALU. Similarly, for the multipliers, 2 input registers and 1 output registers are there. Okay, so then we have memory. We have a register file, and along with that we have another memory block available over here. Okay, so here we have some marks. These representations are actually for multiplexer. Okay, you can actually select whichever be the input to the input register. So you can have 2 possibilities of that input, whether it wants to select from bus 1 or from this particular feedback, whatever be the input that needs to be given to the input register. That can be decided by this multiplexer. Similarly, here also there is a multiplexer. For this multiplier also there is multiplexer, and for memory also, if you are actually having different sources to that particular input to the particular memory, we can actually use a multiplier. So this is the data path. Anyway, in the data path we will be having different functional units, that's ALU or multiplier, and different registers. Okay, it can have register files, memories, and as well as some registers available over there. And for selection of this, we can actually have multiplexers or selectors. There may be different buses, bus 1, bus 2, or bus 3. Different buses will be used inside this particular data path. That's about the data path. This data path section will be common for the FSM-based controller as well as the programmable controller. Okay. So right now we are actually considering the RTL architecture with FSM controller. So in the FSM controller, this is the data path section. Okay, FSM controller data path section we have actually covered. Now the controller section. This one is the controller section. Okay, since it is an FSM based controller means different states will be defined, right? So depending upon the input. Okay. Depending upon the input, that is control inputs may be there, and the status signals. These are the inputs to the input logic. Here we have an input logic. Okay. This is the FSM based controller. It has an input logic. It can actually decide what is the next state of that particular system. Okay. From the control signal as well as the or control inputs as well as the status signal, this input logic will decide the next state of that particular controller, and that will be stored in a SR or state register. SR is the state register. Okay. So the function of the input logic is simple. It has to determine the next state of that particular controller from the control inputs as well as the status signal, and that will be stored to the status register. Okay, then comes the output logic. The output logic has to decide what is the control signal that has to be generated by the controller for the corresponding state. Okay, state register will be having the next state. So based on the state, it has to generate the control signals for the data path as well as the control output. If there is any control output that has to be given to another blocks, that also needs to be generated by the output logic. Okay. So here we have an input logic as well as an output logic. Okay. So input logic will decide the next state based on the control inputs as well as the status signal, and output logic, depending upon the current state, it has to generate what is the control signal that has to be given to the data path, and what are the output or control output that needs to be given to other blocks that is connected to this particular design. Okay, is it clear? RTL architecture of an FSM controller. Clear or not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So anyway, we have two sections. One is data path and the controller. So data path section will be common for the FSM based controller as well as the programmable controller. Next one is the programmable controller. Here the data path section is the same. Okay, this much part is same. Data paths. Okay. Here we will be having some functional units and some registers that will be connected together. We'll be having some register files as well as some memory. Okay. So here the basic difference is in the controller. So we are actually considering two sections. One is an FSM controller for simple design. Now we are actually moving to the next type of controller, that is the programmable controller. In the case of a programmable controller, instead of an input logic and output logic, FSM controller has an input logic and an output logic, but in the case of a programmable controller, there are some differences. Okay, here we have an AG. AG means address generator. Instead of an input logic, okay, we have an address generator. AG, address generator. So here the ALU will be generating the status signal and that will be stored to a status register. This is the status register. This SR is actually the status register. Okay. So depending upon the output, the data path will actually generate some status signal and that will be stored in a status register that can act as the input to the address generator. Okay. And there may be some other control inputs. That means external control inputs may be there that may be acting as an input to this controller, and maybe the instruction or output from the instruction register may be acting as an offset over there and some address. Okay, here in the case of a programmable controller, we have an address generator which generates the address of the next instruction to be executed. Okay, from the corresponding control inputs as well as the status signals. Okay, basically what happens here is, here input logic, instead of input logic we have an address generator. Okay, and this address generator will be generating the address of the next instruction to be executed. So here it is a programmable controller. That means here we have a code memory or program memory. Okay, we have a program memory, and what is the corresponding program for this particular controller that will be stored in this program memory. Okay, programmable controller means here we have a program memory and the program for this particular controller will be stored in this program memory. Okay, the basic function of the address generator is to generate the address of the next instruction to be executed. Okay, and that will be stored in a program counter. Here we have a program counter. So the address generator will generate the address of the next instruction to be executed based on the status signals as well as the control inputs, and that will be stored in a program counter. Okay, so now the program counter has the address of the next instruction to be executed. So that will be, or using this particular address, it will actually select the instruction to be executed from the program memory. Here we have a program memory. The program is already stored in the program memory. So now the program counter has an address, and that is our next instruction to be executed. So address of the next instruction is there. So from that particular location, it can actually take the instruction to be executed, and that will be stored in an instruction register, IR, or control wait register. Another name is control wait register. Okay. Here we have a control wait register or instruction register. So based on the address in the program counter, it will actually select, and from that location it will select the instruction to be executed, and that will be moved to the instruction register. So instruction to be executed will be stored in the instruction register. Okay, so that instruction will be decoded and Based on that, it will generate the control signals for the data path, as well as if there is any control output, that also will be generated based on the instruction to be executed. Okay, this the instruction register will be decoded, and based on that, it will generate the control signals as well as the control outputs. Okay, this is the basic working of a programmable controller. Okay. So basically, the address generator, depending upon the status signals and the control inputs, it will generate the address to be executed. For that, it will need one clock cycle. So in one clock cycle, it will calculate the address of the next instruction, and that will be stored in the program counter. So in the next clock cycle, this address in the program counter will be taken, and it will actually generate it will actually select the instruction to be executed from the program memory, and that will be stored to the instruction register. Then in the next clock cycle, the execution of that particular instruction will be taking place. So in a simple case, it will require 3 clock cycles. 1 clock cycle for the address generator, 2nd clock cycle for selection of that particular instruction, and next 3rd clock cycle is for the execution of that particular instruction. In general, it will take 3 clock cycle, but here in the data path, the situation may be different. That means if you are actually giving one instruction over here, okay, so this particular ALU, right now we are considering what an instruction execution ALU. Okay, here we have some input registers. So before start execution, first step is to store the inputs to this input register. That means here we have some register file as well as the memory. First step is to, once you get the instruction, or once the control signal is given by the controller, the data path needs to execute that particular instruction, right? Once the control signal is given by the controller, the data path needs to do some data manipulation, and it has to give back the data, right? Here, in our scenario, for this particular controller, what we have seen is the controller will require one address generator will require 1 clock cycle. Then in order to select the corresponding instruction from the program memory, it will require 1 clock cycle, and the decoding of the instruction will require, or decoding and execution will require 1 clock cycle. That was our assumption. Okay, here in general, okay, here if you are actually considering the decoding and execution, in simple case it will require 1 clock cycle, but if you are actually looking at this particular architecture, this ALU will require 2 clock cycles. That means ALU will require only 1 clock cycle. In order to store the input from the register files or program memory to this input register, it will require 1 clock cycle. 2 inputs are there. These 2 inputs will be loaded simultaneously. Since we are actually having a 2-port register file, we can actually access 2 registers simultaneously. Okay, so these inputs to this particular input registers will be stored in 1 clock cycle. Okay, once you get the inputs, the ALU can actually do the processing, and it can actually store the data back to this output register, and the status of the signal can be given back to the status register. Okay, so this particular operation will require 2 clock cycles. One is to store the data to the input registers, and one is to process the data and store the result back to the output registers and the status registers. Okay, is it clear? Clear, Ano? Okay, ALU, if you are actually considering the data path, it will minimum require 1 clock cycle for storing the data to the input registers, and 1 clock cycle for the execution of that particular instruction. That means from the data signal, it may be specifying some instruction, maybe addition. If you are actually having 2 inputs in the input register, it has to add A and B, and the result has to be stored to the output register, and the corresponding status needs to be updated in the status register. For that, it will require 1 clock cycle. Okay. So that's the minimum number of clock cycles required by this ALU. Since we have some registers over here, the data needs to be stored to the input register. For that, it will require 1 clock cycle, and for execution, it will require 1 clock cycle. That means it can actually generate the status signal in 2 clock cycles. If there is any write back to the memory, it will actually take. And from this output register, if you want to store the result back to the memory or the register file, it will take another clock cycle. Maybe 1 or 2 clock cycles may be required. And if it is a register file, it will require minimum 1 clock cycle, and if it's a memory, it may be requiring more than 1 clock cycle for memory write. Okay, so if you are actually considering this section alone, it will take minimum 2 clock cycles for generation of the status signal, and if you want to write back the data to the memory, it will require 3 clock cycles. This ALU part. Okay, that means if you are actually considering the whole process, the address generation will take 1 clock cycle. Okay, the address will be generated and it will be stored to the program counter. It will be taking 1 clock cycle. This from the program memory, it has to select the corresponding address, and that instruction needs to be stored to the instruction register. For that, it will require 1 clock cycle, and the execution of that will require minimum 2 clock cycle here. That means 1 clock cycle for storing the data to the input register, and 1 clock cycle for the processing of that. So total, it will take 4 clock cycles. 4 clock cycle, 1 for address generation, 1 for taking the instruction out, and next one is for next 2 clock cycle for the execution of that, for the ALU section. If there is any write back to the memory, that will require another clock cycle. Right now we are not considering the write back to the register file or memory. So right now we are actually considering only the address generation. For the address generation, the input is the status register. That means ALU can actually perform the operation and can update the status register in same clock cycle itself. Okay, so that's why we are actually considering it as 2 clock cycle, 1 for receiving the inputs and 1 for processing the data and updating the status register. That means 2 clock cycle is required here for the execution. 1 for address generation, 1 for taking the instruction out, and next 2 for execution. That is the minimum number of clock cycle required over here. Okay. Anyway, programmable controller will be having a program memory, and the address generator needs to find out the address of the next instruction to be executed, and that will be stored to the program counter. Based on the program counter or address in the program counter, that next instruction will be selected and that will be executed. That is the basic working of a programmable controller. Is it clear? Clear or no? Okay, controller can be of 2 types: FSM based controller and programmable controller.
Programmable controller.
Okay, so that's a basic thing. And if you're actually having a multiplier in this particular data part, we have a multiplier over here, right? This multiplier is actually pipeline multiplier. This particular representation or this black line actually shows that it's a pipeline multiplier. So if you have a multiplier over here and this pipeline multiplier, minimum it requires 2 stage. Right now we are actually assuming that this multiplier is 2-stage pipeline. Okay, so if you are having a 2-stage multiplier over here, and if you are actually performing a multiplication operation, how many clock cycle will it take? 1 clock cycle for storing the inputs, right? Okay, 1 clock cycle for storing the inputs, and 2 clock cycles will be required for this multiplier to generate the output. 2-stage means, so when in first clock cycle, it will be storing the value to the first stage, and in the next clock cycle only, that second stage will be executed and the output will be generated. Okay, if you are giving 2 inputs, the corresponding output will be generated by the multiplier only in the second clock cycle. So 1 clock cycle for storing the inputs, and 2 clock cycles will be required. Since it is a 2-stage pipeline multiplier, we can actually consider it as it will take 2 clock cycles to generate the output. So 1 clock cycle for giving the input, 2 clock cycles will be required by the multiplier to generate the output. Okay, that means 3 clock cycle, 1 for storing the giving the inputs and 2 for generating the output. And if there is a write back to the memory, it will, or if there is a write back to the memory or register file, it will take 1 more clock cycle. That means if you are actually considering this section, it will take minimum 4 clock cycle. Okay, This multiplier section will take a minimum 4 clock cycles for reading the inputs and storing back the results. Okay, reading inputs, executing it, and storing back. For that, it will take a minimum 4 clock cycles. This multiplier section. Okay, and since it is a two-stage pipeline multiplier, it will require one more clock cycle. That's why here it will require minimum 4 clock cycles. Okay. So that's the basics of this particular controller. Controller can be of FSM based type and programmable controllers will be there. That is for complex designs, we will be actually moving to the programmable controller. And for simple designs, we can actually use the FSM based controller. So next section is the input specification. That means here in this particular diagram, we have the specification, right? This thing, specification. So next we will be dealing with the specification. That means input specification can be done in different methods. Okay, it can be written using some programming languages. It can be either using C, C++, or some system design languages or system description languages, system C, etc. Or it can be used using some control data flow graph method, FSMP or finite state machine with data type, RTL netlist type, or HDL, hardware description language, can be used as the method for giving the input. Okay, so here in the next slides we will be actually seeing how these particular instructions will be executed, or how we can actually specify a particular functionality using any of these methods. Okay, that we can actually cover in the next class. So how we can actually specify a particular example using programming language. Same thing can be defined using this FSMD or control flow data type, or this will be evaluated in the next class. Okay, right now we can actually stop here. Is there any doubt? This input specification we can actually cover in the next class. Okay, right now we have actually covered only the design flow. Okay, design flow. That means from specification, what we need the RTL model.
RTL code.
Okay, that is what we call as a design. In between, we will be generating a tool model, and then we will be specifying the HLS. In HLS, we have allocation, binding, and scheduling. These are the 3 methods. And then we have gone through an RTL architecture. Basic RTL architecture will be having a controller section as well as a data path. Controller will be generating the control output based on the control inputs. Control outputs as well as the control signals to the data path will be generated by the controller. And data path, based on the data input, it can actually, or based on the control signal, it can actually process the data input and can generate the data output and the status signal back to the controller. So this controller can be an FSM based controller or a programmable controller. So in the case of an FSM controller, you will be having an input logic and an output logic. Input logic means, so what's the next state? That will be computed using some logic gates. Okay, input logic means we'll be actually generating the gate level representation of the particular input logic, and based on the current signals, the current state, and as well as the status signal, it will decide what is the next state. That will be stored back to the state register, and then depending on the current state, it will be generating control signals. That is the output logic. Okay, anyway, input logic and output logic will be there for an FSM based controller, and for a programmable controller, that will be replaced by a programmable memory and an address generator. Input specification, instead of that, we'll be having an address generator. Here we will be having a program memory. So corresponding instruction has to be taken out and has to be executed. So the next instruction will be calculated by the address generator. Okay, is it clear?
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, with this we can